Done. Yes, we are keeping you company and also keeping us company is none other than my brother Ashraf Patel. Ashraf, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Trust and hope you still enjoying this beautiful month of Ramadan.
Walaikum salam, Inayat. Hope you and all listeners are well. Yes, it is going way too fast, and but you're right. It's about the quality, not the quantity, as they say, and that is the message and spirits of Ramadan, getting into the last 10 nights. And as you correctly point out, the another odd night tonight. So and a Jummah, so that's a double bonus, and hopefully we can do our best.
Well, we certainly will. And Ashraf, I know we are talking about democracy, and we're talking obviously in an African context, and I suppose just generally, even just talking about democracy. Now, there were, and especially when we're living in a multipolar world, we find that. Right across the entire world, whether we're looking at it in Africa, we're looking at it in Western Europe. We're looking at it wherever it is, where they're trying to push democracy, even into the Arab world, where there's dictators and dictatorship and all of that. Now, I know you penned this article about democracy and its discontents in a multipolar world, and I'm sure there are glaring examples even within South Africa. Even if we pride to have one of the best constitutions as a country, and we are a democracy.
Yes, Inayat, definitely. Look, the article was penned on the African portal titled Democracy and its Discontents in a Multipolar Order. And yes, your introduction was very, very important as we look into 2024. Uh, all the analysts, of course, are welcoming or looking forward to covering no less than 56 elections throughout the world. At least 70% of humanity, as they say, go to the polls this year, which is unprecedented, but it is not a good advert for kind of liberal democracy is promoted by the West. And so the article does unpack and critique the Western liberal framework or discourse on democracy. I mean, you talked about Turkey, about India. Just earlier in the week, Turkey had city elections, so elections in all the big four cities. And as you saw there, the opposition won, especially in Istanbul. And that's quite significant that after 22 years in power, Erdogan and the PK party are losing support. And that is an interesting development. Now, as you know, there are debates on both sides of the scale. On the one hand, for instance, in the Turkish context, Erdogan has been seen as promoting a pan Ottoman Islamic discourse, but under an authoritarian framework. And that's where the debate comes in. Looking at the Gaza conflict and genocide in Gaza, although rhetorically he has been pro Palestine, but in reality, even the Erdogan PK party is pro West. Just next week, on the 9th of May, actually, in a few weeks' time, he visits Washington, D.C. And as a member of NATO, he will be purchasing arms from the US. So this is Turkey under Erdogan and the PK party buying the very same F 16s that's destroying Palestine and Gaza. So is he really an ally of Palestine? The jury is still out. So these are the dynamics and contradictions of democracy. India is the same. So, authoritarian, supposedly democratic, but in the last 10 years, under BJP party, it has slided into a nationalist chauvinism state where all minorities, not just Muslims, I mean, Muslims, Dalits, and Christians are marginalized from public life, and recently even Sikhs. So there's a full scale nationalist attack on the other. And this is in the world's largest democracy. 600 million people vote. It costs $3 billion. It takes over 6 months. So the question then arises, is this really a democracy that has a social peace or can unite nations? And you look at other nations that are going through elections, the big ones, of course, going to be the US, UK this year as well, France, all the incumbents, the parties, Conservative Party, have been in power for 12 years in the United Kingdom. Of citizens have seen 12 years of austerity and of a draconian legislation, from the Home Affairs to repression through freedom of speech. All of these have been under severe attack under the Conservative Party. And then the question then arises, will there be a turnaround in the UK system? And then, of course, South Africa, which I said is becoming into a circus. I mean, if you look at uh, the number of political parties that have mushroomed in the last several months or weeks, there's a joke out amongst the policy analysts that there's more political parties than even the alphabet can accommodate. So that makes it a circus, I guess. And you've seen it in South Africa. So when you go to the ballot, you're going to have 3 pages of different parties and colors and names. The big question, substantive question, is uh, does this kind of liberal multi party democracy really promote genuine dialogues and understanding of policy and what it means? And of course, lots of samples and surveys are saying no, the ordinary South African voter, citizen, cannot differentiate substantively between what the different parties stand for. So that means it has become a circus, Western style multi party democracy. So that's the thrust of the article. And then we go
Well,
on in
coming back to the Western style multi-party democracy, Ashraf, and again, when one looks at the West, when one looks at the United States of America, when one looks at even Western Europe, and when one looks at their definition of democracy and trying to impose that definition of democracy into the rest of the world, whether we're looking at Latin America, whether we're looking at Africa, whether we're looking at the Middle East. We've seen it even after the Arab Spring, where there was all this talk about democracy in the Middle East. Now, all of this actually puts together and tells us, that, clearly there is a problem. There is a problem in embracing this Western style democracy in many a country. And you cite these examples. You speak about the litmus test for elections in your article. You speak about Senegal. You speak about Pakistan, the sham elections that took place in Pakistan. You've made mention of India, supposedly this world's largest democracy. But again, pushing this whole Hindutva ideology at the expense of minorities. So all of this, when one looks at it, even in the Middle East, I mean, Egypt just had their elections recently, and once again, you've got a dictator like Sisi again back into power. All of this telling us that, listen, we've got a huge problem. We've got a massive problem in embracing democracy in general, whether it's Western style democracy or democracy in any other form.
Yes, definitely. If we go, researchers go to the roots of the system. So after World War II in 1945, when the Allies won, there was that famous speech by Winston Churchill that basically talked about a new iron curtain that has fallen across Europe, and that he meant that a new ideological battle that introduced the concept of a Cold War was introduced in 1946, uh, where the USSR, i.e., the communist bloc, then were competing globally versus the Western democracies or capitalism. And that has largely shaped the post order for the last 75 years. Uh, what is very interesting is, although they were allies and they defeated fascism post World War II, These nations then went into a major competition, and ironically, the United Nations was formed in 1948 with the express purpose to avoid conflicts and wars that we see today. So that is the one big irony. So the liberal international order promoted by Roosevelt and Churchill in Western Europe then took root, and this became a massive enterprise. So, there is the Time magazine editor at the time, Henry Luce, who penned a significant article called The American Century. And in that article, it set a framework for scholars and foreign policy establishment that said the pillars of Western style democracy would be multi party systems, freedom of speech, freedom of press, and consumerism. So, packaged with elections was the US capitalist model called consumerism. So, on the one hand, the promotion of Coca Cola, McDonald's, McKinsey, US corporations was the profit centers. And on the other hand, the US system and large foundations that promoted democracy. But it was a response, of course. The backdrop was the Cold War rivalry, and that kept the system in competition for 45 years until the early 90s with the collapse of the Berlin Wall, the reunification of Germany. A new era entered. Now, that second phase, what scholars call, is essentially a famous scholar called Francis Fukuyama wrote in the early 90s a book called The End of History. And that book was the Bible of the international liberal order. And he said that, look, Western style capitalism has won. And that has been quite dominant for the last 20 years. But that discourse, and now scholars have seen there was a shortcomings to that analysis, that ignored the rise of other systems, especially China. So in all of this
Yeah.
Cold War
Ashraf, can
conversations,
I just stop you there for a minute,
yes,
please? I'd
yes,
like to come to China. In fact, I know in your article you've made mention of China, the rise of China and BRICS, and also the new multipolar order in your article. And I'd like to talk about that. But before that, we just need to pay some bills. And we'll be back after this ad break.
okay.
Of your dreams and surround yourself with her spectacular beauty. Relax beneath her serene sunsets and explore wildlife at its natural best. It's where the pride of Africa comes together. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve. Get to know the Big Five or cruise on an elephant safari game drive. Interact with lion and tiger cubs and enjoy world-class halal cuisine while we pamper you during your 5-star stay. Indulge in the true African experience. For reservations, call now on 042 203 1400 or visit kwantu.co.za. The Kwantu Private Game Reserve, the place of gathering.
Freedom Stationery supply Marlin and Marlin Kids pens to me and my school friends. They supply just about everything we need to help us get a better education, from books to files to rulers. In fact, any any accessory we need. Freedom Stationery. Education for the nation. What does accessory mean?
From samosas and half moons to cook sisters and roti, everything between iftar and seri makes sunfoil cooking oil an essential part of your Ramadan. Approved by the Heart and Stroke Foundation as part of a healthy diet, this blessed month, give your family the best with sunfoil, because tradition just tastes better.
World-class financial services only at Sapphire Global, your financial partner. If you are looking for Islamic, Sharia, and ethical financial products, look no further. Sapphire Global offers a wide range of financial service offerings from short-term to life and investments. a full-service center with all financial requirements under one brand. Our highly skilled and experienced consultants are ready to help protect your financial future. Contact us on 041 001 0184 or visit our website on www.sapphireglobalfs.com. Sapphire Global is an authorized financial services provider.
Food with love. Zakat makes it possible to establish the things that matter. It sets the foundation right for the family around the dinner table, the mothers who carry the heavy load, the children who want to play. Zakat is not just money. It is the reason why so many across the world are smiling before they sleep. Your zakat helps us continue to serve with love, with hope, because with you, we can. Give your zakat to Penny Appeal South Africa today. www.pennyappeal.org.za. Penny Appeal. Small change, big difference.
Abu Huraira narrated that he heard the Prophet Muhammad, may the peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, say, "In black seed there is a healing for every disease except death." This Ramadan, experience the health benefits of this ancient blessed seed by using the Tib Black Seed range. Black seed assists the body to boost immunity, regulate blood sugar levels, reduce inflammation, and act as a potent antioxidant. Experience a holistic approach to health by introducing the Tib Black Seed range into your Ramadan routine. Available in capsules, pure cold-pressed oil, and a vapor rub. Trust Tib Health Sciences for quality black seed products. For more information, visit blackseed.co.za. Available at leading pharmacies.
You are listening to Salam Media live from our headquarters in South Africa. This is Salam Media, keeping you company this Ramadan.
Well, the time is just gone 4:30 p.m. as we continue our discussion with Ashraf Patel. And we are talking about democracy and its discontent in a multipolar world. And Ashraf Patel has actually penned this article, very, very interesting dynamics when one looks at democracy right across the entire world. And also at the same time, to look at this fallacy of democracy. Now, we know, Ashraf, the cornerstone of democracy is one of its pillars, its strong pillars, is capitalism. We know how that has actually been promoted. But I'm just looking at the picture, yes, on the screen, talking about democracy in Asia. And this is the reason why I'd like to talk about China. We are part of BRICS, and we know China is there as well. India is there. Russia is there. Now with the inclusion of the likes of Saudi Arabia. So we're going to have quite a mix, actually, in what's in BRICS. But just looking generally at capitalism, and we've seen it even through the COVID area, and we've seen it for a number of years now, where we find that in the West, especially, people are getting poorer. We're finding people getting richer. More millionaires, more billionaires are springing up on the one side, and more homeless and more people are living even below the breadline on the other side. Now, all of this is taking place in countries that are supposed to be the champions of democracy. We don't see any semblance of democracy in their conditions, in their living conditions, in their earnings, in the state of joblessness. All of this, the banking sector as well. We see how the banks obviously have been milking it as well. We see it here in South Africa, with the rich getting richer, the poor getting poorer, more millionaires, more billionaires in a capitalist South Africa. China is doing something very, very different. And in your article, you speak about China not being a formal democracy. It doesn't claim to be one. Yet, under the Chinese Communist Party, the government has managed the state and society and 500 million people out of poverty and a middle class of a few hundred million. Now, that is phenomenal.
Definitely, Inayat. This is the big success story of this century, the rise and rise of China. So, while the West and the old Soviet bloc were in a massive contestation, China has quietly adopted the best of both worlds. And I think the turning point was in 1980 when Chairman Deng Xiaoping became the chairman of China, president of China, he introduced or opened up China to the world and experimented with special economic zones. So at that stage, there were a hierarchical, communist, centrally planned politics and society and state, but they saw the logic of attracting foreign direct investment in specific zones, and they became the manufacturing factory of the world for well over 3 decades. Since the 1990s, since they joined the World Trade Organization in 96, for 25 years, they have been the world's largest exporter of everything from appliances to textiles to telecommunication networks to autos. And they have gained the most from the World Trade Organization because they played the game very, very strategically. All the while, the CCP, Chinese Communist Party, was in the background controlling the entire state and economic policies. All their major global firms have state owned ownership. And this has been the secret of their success. So, the famous saying by Deng Xiaoping, it doesn't matter if the cat is black or white as long as it catches the mice. That logic, meaning that he wasn't worried about ideology, he wanted to experiment with systems and make it work for them. And remarkably, they have taken 500 million people out of poverty. And remember, China was colonized just like India was, or South Africa, or Nigeria, or Ghana. But it has followed that model of communism with a social market. And today it is a superpower in 75 years. It's matching the US. The US is a state that's over 265 years old. China is only 75 years old. But yet China is matching the US in all the major GDP indicators, technological progress, economic. In fact, China is now exceeding the US and Europe in 5G, in artificial intelligence, in electric vehicles. So it has scaled unparalleled, and the West is really now concerned of its rapid rise. And therefore, you're seeing all these harsh trade agreements against China. But so this is the wonders of a system if you make it work for you. And whereas the most of the global south, compare it to India, China is 4 times the size of the Indian economy. Its infrastructure investment is 12 times, and therefore its economic outcomes is significantly higher at every level. Whereas India has chosen the multi-party democracy, which is very slow, very complicated. It has lots of red tape. It brings all kinds of different parties and ethnic and religious based parties into the system. It really divides a state or nation states or locals. Whereas China has just got one state, one nation, one system, and they just scale and scale and scale. So that is the difference, you know, and therefore pundits, political analysts, researchers are saying that model works. It meets all the United Nations Millennium Development Goals, Sustainable Development Goals. It's the leader in green energy investments, new technologies, fin technologies, etc. So these are the comparatives. And it does this, it achieves this without all the noise of multi-party democracy. I think that is the thesis.
Well, Ashraf, Jazakallah khairan for that. And I'm sure there's just so much more that we can actually unpack. But unfortunately, time is of the essence. But as always, we appreciate you taking time out, talking to us on Salam Media, and all the best to you, my brother, and for the rest of Ramadan, inshallah.
Shukran for the opportunity. Much appreciated.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam.
It was Ashraf Patel joining us this afternoon. Quite an interesting discussion. And next up, we are going to be talking about travels. And we're talking Turkey. We're talking to Avoca Travels when we get back after this break.